not too far-fetched then to wonder if people can hear at a even higher level without devices, noticeable ones anyway. And say, you know, people got off on that and they started playing with your information. Somehow they tapped you specifically. Entire plays, television shows could be created with some of the information that comes from your world. All of a sudden there's like dog walker TV all over the place. Comedies based on dog walkers, you know what I mean? So where do they get the information? And do they examine dog parks and dog walkers? Or are people abusing a special privilege? And all of a sudden they're making $5 million on a script that got sold to Hollywood, while there's a bunch of dog walkers trying to scrape to survive somewhere in every major city. You know, this can be done anywhere, but in cities, you know, it can be a little bit more lucrative depending on how crowded it is, how much demand and stuff like that. It's really tall. This one I can't tell. You could run a crazy. So, anyway, I don't want to go because the pedestrian sign was still red. This is a delay, like, intersection here, so it's like hard to tell when that light's going to turn unless you're like completely looking at it. But there's Center City, Philadelphia. Hey, look at all these. Right. Who gets to be? I always wondered how some people get to be manly. That's a man, right? Big time. Chinatown house. There was a whole report on like 2020. Eric Stossel, thank you. I can picture him, and sometimes I remember his name, but there it was on the airwaves, just a catch. And he did a whole thing on why do some people seem incredibly mature, or say for men, manly. And he kind of joked about himself seeming like a whiner who reports as a journalist on TV about, you know, and he's whining about this, whining. And then there are these people who just like are, you know, kind of are big, rule the world, and take charge, and they just have a whole different life, a completely different take on life, or a completely different experience in life because of who they are. He, you know, Eric Stossel kind of made fun of himself. I'm pretty sure that's his name, by saying whiner, you know, but sometimes people who are journalists can seem that way because they have to report things that other people won't touch. You know, they don't want to come across as someone revealing like truth, you know, and things going on out in the world that other people just are hush-hush about. We don't want to be the one saying anything. Hell no. So, you know. Anyway. But wow, that guy had an earbud in his ear. And Superman. Right, super manly. So, of course, there's all different types of men. Like, he's your, I guess, classic jock type, I guess, who's come into age and he's older. And then you have your sensitive types, who's, you know, your long hairs. I have a friend who's a super beautiful person, and he's played guitar forever. He got like a degree, a master's in music theory, I guess. That's a whole brain situation that's, you know, he teaches and everything out of his own home now, but had a studio for many years, I guess. And you know, it's this thing where sometimes you see all the beauty in all different types of people, and you're like, you know, then when you're older, like, there's sort of a thing like, how do you know, like, say you actually, like, you know, want to get married or settle down, how do people decide if all of a sudden everyone seems beautiful? And you're like, do you go with the sensitive type? Do you go with, and then they have to decide equally, you know what I mean? And then, you know, of course, there was a show about this, like 30 something or whatever years ago, and it would be like some guy asks, you know, the woman to marry him, and then from then on he kept seeing like every woman on the street was beautiful to him. He's like, are you know, as soon as I decide to commit, there are like 50 million other options that pop up as like potential better right, ladies? So But same thing. It's like to see all these different types of people as attractive, and you know, you got your big burly Herculean, you know, they wouldn't say Stone Age, but you know, they're just built a certain way. They're probably on track and field or similar, you know what I mean, football. Right, then we then we have other sensitive types who are probably like lawyers or similar, right, you know, as we approach case in point, you know. You know, what do you do? And there's all these different types, and then how do people wind up settling down from either side, whatever kind of relationship you're in? Like, how do you pick, you know? And you would know, like, okay, they're out of my league. I went to University of Delaware. So you would kind of know, like, I know those people had a better education and probably a better upbringing. But I already know that guy went to Ivy League, and the other guy, you know, probably is currently Ivy League, like a student. Is he older? It's hard to tell. He was right on the cusp. And it's like, how do you know who you are compatible with or fit with for the long term without being insecure your whole life? Like, I would be totally wondering when the shoe would drop and, you know, someone better would come along and they would choose that person later. That would suck, you know what I mean? So, should we take a risk? Solar kiss. Just kiss. If you want a solar kiss, you're gonna take a risk. That's Kinneret with No Wind Resistance. So, right, and then, okay, so all of a sudden they pointed out how this guy's walking. It's not too bad. Some people have a real, like, splayed out foot situation, and some people don't. So that came up as, like, a deal breaker. That is hilarious. What if people are examined that closely, you know? And, you know, what do you do? Right. I have no idea, because I was lucky enough to even have anyone borderline interested. So it was so bad that I, like, later would be introduced to the neighborhood and was like, whoa, then all of a sudden everybody looked beautiful there. And it was like, what? I get to be in control? Like, I could be the one who takes charge in a way and, you know, pursues, you know, it's not this kind of pursues, like, all of a sudden I feel like I'm in a male role. And wow, what a difference, especially for someone like me who was always taken advantage of and never really in control, predatorialized by people. So anyway, right, then there's those folks and you're like not sure because you feel like, you know, anyway, so this is fascinating to me, this topic. I'm being somewhat modest. Actually, I'm just being truthful. Like, I sort of had a certain experience in life. I was sort of odd, like more, not odd. I just wasn't involved. I did some things in school, but not a lot. I wound up working a lot, even half day my junior and senior year, way back in high school. So I worked half a day, went to school half a day. And, right, he reminds me of the Independence guy from the dog. So seeing people who remind me of people from years ago. And, right, it's not him, but there's a similar